While living in Cadereyta and directing the EMS program for the city, there were several occasions when I found myself alone and got a call over the radio of an accident or an injured person, and would go directly to the scene. There were other occasions when I would come across an accident or medical emergency when I wasn't even on duty, but still had a duty to stop and help. Once I was driving alone, returning to town from the ranch, when my headlights illuminated what appeared to be a body on the side of the road. I slowed down and pulled over. Sure enough, it was an injured man, apparently the victim of a hit and run. It was dark and there was no one anywhere around, but as an EMT, it was my duty to stop and help however I could. In God's providence, I happened to be driving the Ford Taurus station wagon that was donated by my friend Tom, and that I had equipped as a first response unit for the rescue squad. I turned on the blue lights, pulled over, got out, and grabbed my kit. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I put on some gloves and by the light of the headlights did a rapid assessment of the victim. He was breathing and semi-responsive to stimuli. He was moaning but unable to answer any questions. He had also been drinking with the smell of alcohol on his breath. He may have wandered onto the highway and been hit by a passing car. I told him I was going to check him over. When I checked for fractures, I found some serious instability in his pelvis, indicating a probable fracture of his hip. This was a very serious, life-threatening injury. The mechanism of injury, impact by a motor vehicle, indicated other possible internal injuries. He had contusions and abrasions, but these were not of concern because he was in shock and immediate transport was indicated. I recall that I had never actually used the backboard stretcher invention I built for the Taurus wagon ambulance before, but I was going to use it now. It was essentially a full backboard with 2 wheels at the top. I reparked the car in front of the victim, opened the back, and pulled it out. First, I put a cervical collar on the man to immobilize his spine, and carefully rolled him onto his side with 2 hands, slid the backboard stretcher under him with my foot, and lowered him onto it. I strapped him down and positioned him in line with the vehicle. I lifted the head end of the stretcher and placed the wheels gently on the back bumper, then moved to the back and lifted the foot end, praying that he wouldn't fall off. I pushed and the stretcher slid perfectly into the back of the station wagon. By God's grace, my invention worked. I closed the door, got behind the wheel, and headed for the Pemex hospital about 8 miles away. The highway was deserted, so I didn't need the siren, but the flashing blue light on the roof could be seen from miles away. I finally pulled into the hospital emergency bay and orderlies came out to take the patient inside. I breathed a sigh of relief and prayed for the patient who, in God's providence, I just happened to find when I just happened to have everything I needed to provide emergency care and transport in his moment of need. This case stands out in stark contrast to the time before I was an EMT, when I came upon an accident and no one could do anything for the victims until an ambulance arrived from Monterey, over an hour away. I thanked God that this time I was able to help. I filled out the paperwork on the case for our own records and for the hospital. I don't remember if we followed up with the case or even if the patient survived and recovered or not. I want to believe that he did. I just can't say for sure. It was such a crazy busy time in my life. There were so many cases, some involving long recoveries and others involving funerals. But that solo midnight roadside rescue was one that will forever stand out in my mind. I wonder what would have happened to him if I hadn't passed by that night. Even though I was trained and prepared and equipped for emergencies such as this one, and I did everything right, rather than feel any sense of pride or satisfaction, I just felt inadequate and incompetent, wondering what in the world I was doing. I guess anything was better than nothing. God only knows. Thank you so much for listening to this true story from Memoirs of Mexico. If you enjoyed this story, or if it was a blessing to you, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That would be a blessing to me. I upload a new true story every day. If you like to read, you can also order Memoirs of Mexico in paperback or ebook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks again for listening.